Awesome. Well, welcome back, everybody, to another Founder Sessions. We're here this time with my friend Jeff, who is an entrepreneur in the cannabis space. I'll let him intro himself more to talk in more detail about it. But we're just, overall really excited to have this conversation.
Awesome.
Jeff, I know that we had an event in this space.
We did.
Now coming up on like 9 months ago.
Last January.
Yep. So I'm excited personally just to see what's changed since that conversation, given your specialty in this space. So, Jeff, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. Jeff Samuels. I'm the general manager of AlphaRoot. We're an insurance technology company focused on the cannabis space. So we've been doing insurance for startup companies for the last 5 years or so. And about 3 years ago, when New York legalized the Compassionate Care Act here, a lot of news, a lot of changes going on in the cannabis space overall. We just saw a huge opportunity to really become specialized, provide a service, which is insurance. And when we think about cannabis, definitely not the first thing people think about. But we felt it was something that helps legitimize these businesses. It helps kind of bring the companies into the mainstream and ultimately protect the companies if they are in a situation where they have a massive product recall or there's some sort of issue that could shutter the company. We wanted to be able to provide that backstop, provide the service to help these guys scale the company, stay in business, and ultimately provide a service that we think legitimizes cannabis.
Yeah, and so you were in the tech space with Founder Shield, and launching this as a cannabis and agriculture product was the next big step for you.
Yep.
Yeah. So what brought you to tech, and then what about cannabis is a space that really stokes your passion?
Stokes my passion. I like that.
So, pun unintended, but I should take credit for it.
Pun intended.
Yeah.
So I guess just very quick on the backstory. I came up in the ad tech business and really more affiliate marketing. Shout out to my buddy Rob Schwartz if he's watching. But we interned kind of in this space during college and kind of got comfortable with ad networks and kind of affiliate marketing as that was becoming a prominent thing back in 2009. That's taken me on a journey through a few different tech companies, but largely in the startup space, and basically long and short, one of the last mobile tech companies I was at, a business called XDefi, we were purchased by IBM, so went through a really cool acquisition, but that really kind of gave me the opportunity to see what it's like working at tech startups, what it's like being an entrepreneur and growing a business, raising capital and exiting, and then also what it's like going through the acquisition and being on the corporate side of things. It's a great experience at IBM and obviously enjoyed that and learned a ton. But for me, definitely a little bit more gritty. I like working with smaller teams where you can really make an impact. So that was kind of my experience on the tech side. At the time, I knew I wanted to leave IBM and come back down to my roots, again, pun intended. And I had came across the guys from Founder Shield who just got started at that time, and they were doing insurance for tech startups. I thought it was a brilliant idea based on my experience the past 10 years or so working with these various startup companies and seeing that as one of the pain points. So when I came over to Founder Shield, that was the first sales hire, and we kind of worked on building out the business model. How do we provide a good service, which is insurance to fast, high growth businesses, fast-paced businesses. So how do we really attack that and provide a good service for startups in general? And then again, fast forward a couple years later, cannabis became one of those niches and one of those emerging industries. We felt, holy crap, like this is an awesome business. We need something solely focused on cannabis. Myself growing up in pretty liberal environments and certainly a fan of the cannabis plant and all of the benefits that it brings. It was something that I wanted to kind of attack and take on that opportunity. And
so it's both the opportunistic aspect of it as an industry, which I think attracts a lot of people, but also your core beliefs in that people can benefit from using the product in its full array, and you guys can facilitate, from a business aspect, reducing risk around that.
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of things when you look at the cannabis industry. if you compare it to tech in general, a lot of people, and I think the numbers are there, it's growing faster than not only the dot-com boom back in the day, but also kind of the modern tech growth that we're witnessing here. Like California is legalizing adult use in January. That market alone represents $5.5 billion in sales. That's one state, so massive opportunity. We're seeing places like Canada legalizing and that being run by the government. Internationally, places like Israel and Germany and a lot of other countries are rolling out programs. So opportunity is massive. And for me, it's yes, the adult use is cool. Like obviously, I enjoy it. I think my peers do as well. But the medical side is also really amazing. Looking at again places like Israel and some of the studies they've been able to do to help people with epilepsy, with cancer, with different ailments, and really kind of use the tool and use the cannabis plant as medicine.
Yeah. How big is the space now?
Massive, massive, and I think for new people getting into the space, the toughest thing is like figuring out what part of the market do you want to attack. Yeah. Even from like a geography standpoint, being that we're in New York City, we're certainly one of the rare businesses that are working on cannabis, although largely growing here, and like High Times is right downstairs, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But as you go kind of further to the West Coast and again internationally, ton of opportunity in this space. Certainly a $1 billion market overall, and I think it's really just a matter of like how you want to position your company to provide a service to the space. Whether it's you're a cannabis grower, you're a dispensary, or you're an insurance guy, there are business services that are needed just like any other industry, and I think that's where people are having success is kind of capitalizing on those gaps in the market.
So what you mentioned a couple of different areas, but how would you break down these different sectors, and who are you working with? Who are your clients in the space?
For sure. From the sector standpoint, like there's kind of two different ways the industry looks at the business and the types of companies in it. It's plant touching businesses. You're a grower, you're a cultivator, you're a dispensary, you're a manufacturer of edibles, that sort of thing. And then you're an ancillary service, like Alpharoot is an ancillary service. One of the coolest areas, which kind of brings us back to tech, is the software side of the business. Okay. So anybody who is awarded a license, regardless of the state, there's something called the seed to sale technology, which basically allows a state like Colorado to be able to track every single piece of flower, is what we call the bud, that goes into the ground, that's ultimately grown, sold, and kind of transacted to the end user. The way that Colorado is able to say we did $1 billion of sales and take that money and put it into the infrastructure is through these seed to sale tracking systems, which are largely CRMs catered to the cannabis business. Yeah. Ton of clients in that space, which definitely proud to say, and I was telling Nam before.
By the way, quick shout out Nam Lee, the man behind the camera.
Shout out Nam.
Love that guy. Yeah. Subtle. Good timing on that.
But these companies are massively important because it's inventory management. They're providing point of sale systems. It's infrastructure, and it's all driven through tech. And I think if you look at like any other software that was applied to a retail business, like a Crate and Barrel or Sephora, Ralph Lauren, it's largely these systems now catered to cannabis. Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of companies like Baker is a really cool client of ours. They're more on like the customer loyalty side of things.
Interesting.
Trellis, which is our kind of enterprise software, they're doing some of the seed to sale stuff. Yeah. Headset does dispensary analytics. So a ton of really awesome companies in this space. So that's kind of the ancillary. Yeah. Our business kind of started with the tech first, which is obviously what my background is, and now we're getting more into insuring large scale grows, insuring dispensaries, insuring edible companies, and more kind of the plant touching side of the business.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And are these things only changing now it's been legalized, or some of these they're just aspects that have been changing over time?
There's a ton of different stuff. I think like when people thought about cannabis maybe 5 years ago, it's like Bob Marley. It's you're thinking about like people in tie-dye and hippies in this whole kind of old school imagery of the business.
Which is what the jams were playing. This only comes on.
Shout out to Fish. But like, today it's people who are buttoned up, investors, especially in New York and San Fran, they see the money coming in. Companies like us, again, like I largely support the plan and the industry, but I like to think we're a little bit more clean cut. So I think it's been that kind of adjustment from taking this kind of stigmatized, like, stoner hippie culture, and now this is a legitimate billion-dollar industry. People are changing their lives to enter and work in this space.
Yeah.
So I think it's becoming legitimate. Using services like a Nomad Financial, like bringing in people to do the books, bringing in insurance guys to get product liability, insure the grow. It's these sort of services that are helping kind of button up the industry. Diversity is a huge thing, and there's still like the old school culture and mentality of kind of the growers from Northern California and how this stuff came into the mainstream. It's still there, but I think now it's just a little bit more serious, and people see the money and the potential behind the plant and the business.
Yeah, it's funny, you mentioned the investors, and you have people who open up funds to focus specifically on this space, like Poseidon.
Yep.
And then you have your traditional VC investors, like Lyra Ventures, or Lyra Hippo Ventures,
exactly,
who've gotten into the space as investors as well. Then that really requires entrepreneurs to be the more buttoned up, to run their business like any other entrepreneur, as opposed to it's an ignored space or a space where they will kind of get away with it.
Yeah. The toughest thing is every single state has different rules and regulations, but you're exactly right. If you want to raise capital, if you want to be able to scale and look at companies in just the traditional startup industry that are not focusing on cannabis, you can kind of look at them and say, how did these guys raise their Series A? How did they scale their business from a staffing perspective? I think largely people forget best business practices.
Yeah.
If you do the best business practices and you have a niche and a corner of the market, you're going to be successful. And I think that's something that a lot of our clients do well.
Yeah.
And a lot of clients and customers in the space who are also forgetting to do that, and those are the companies that are kind of fizzling out. So I think making sure that you're buttoning up, doing all the best practices as a business is crucial to the longevity of any cannabis company.
Yeah, so that's great advice. Is there any other advice you'd provide entrepreneurs, particularly newer ones looking at the space?
Sure. I think as I kind of alluded to before, the industry is massive. There's so many different needs from not only growers and dispensaries and people to create the product, but again, the ancillary services are huge.
Yeah.
I think education around the product, and especially things like CBD and hemp.
Yeah.
Which
what is CBD?
CBD is a part of the cannabis plant, which is less psychoactive, or the non-psychoactive part of the cannabis plant. Also, you can derive CBD from hemp.
Okay.
It's largely used as a medicine. For me, it's like a healing thing after I play hockey or play a sport, or like my wife Carly likes it as something to put on after she works out as well.
Okay.
So it's more for.
Is it oil? Is that what you're kind of putting on it?
Yeah, they make it in a bunch of different forms. There are tinctures, there are lotions. You can get a CBD vape pen, or even you can smoke it.
Yeah.
But I think like CBD and hemp products, which are taking more of the holistic angle.
Yeah.
That's super interesting, because that's the type of stuff where, from the legality standpoint, you don't need necessarily a cannabis license to be able to sell and dispense it.
Yeah.
And those are the guys who are trying to sell their products in places like Whole Foods and GNC and other like over-the-counter places.
Yeah.
So I think CBD hemp, super interesting.
And it's one of those areas that are expanding.
Yeah.
Because of the increased education. And knowledge around this space.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Very cool.
Yep.
And so, you talked about, there's legalities, concerns when you're kind of entering the space.
Yep.
There's a changing landscape. If you're not entering the space, but you're just kind of, I think we have some people who are just curious about it.
Sure.
What does that look like? Like, what to you? What has this changed landscape been? right?
So-
Because maybe even on the ground more, you're running into more people who they themselves have changed perspective on the industry or what it means to be a cannabis entrepreneur. Which from the inside we know what it looks like, seeing people who are doing it. But what do you think for people who are on the outside still looking, through the looking glass?
Yeah. Again, I think East Coast is really interesting. And New Jersey, for example, last night, Phil Murphy got elected. He's a huge cannabis proponent. He said in his first 100 days, he's going to, put a bill into place to legalize adult use.
Yeah.
So things like that, which, it's the tough part because this stuff changes every single day. But for people trying to get involved in this space, there's a bunch of really good newsletters, but MJ Biz is like one of the biggest in the space. They host a conference, which is next week. There's 16,000 people that are attending.
How big has that gotten over time?
When I went 3 years ago, I want to say it was like 7,000.
Yeah.
So pretty
impressive.
massive.
Yeah.
And now we have they're NFL players, ex-NBA guys, all sorts of celebrities and interesting people who are involved in the business. So it's really cool to watch it change. But, I think the ways that people can get involved are keep up on the news, find a couple of newsletters like MJ Biz. There are a couple others like New Frontier has a really good daily newsletter. Some others that if you guys email me or, I can shoot over. But that's huge.
Yeah.
I think networking is a big piece of the business.
Yeah.
I'm part of something called the National Cannabis Industry Association, NCIA, and I sit on the Finance and Insurance Committee. So advocacy and making sure that these laws and these changes are happening on the government and the politician level, that stuff's super important as well.
Yeah.
So, go on Meetup, find local groups in your area and just show up. You'll learn something every time you go. I think largely what everybody says in this space, people want to give you information. People want to help you. It's a brand new industry.
Yeah.
And although, it seems like there's a million different businesses and they're already kind of, leading the way, which they are, there's still a ton of space and there's still a ton of opportunity. So if you want to search, and you want to get involved, go out to the meetings, find people who are in the business, and they will largely share ways that you can kind of get involved.
What's interesting in terms of, I think, for people outside the industry who don't see or know, was I was at a conference recently, and one of the things I learned about was if you think about the voting behavioral changes that were required to pass these laws, it's mostly being driven by younger people, right? That's the shape, I think, is of who's pushing these boundaries forward, but other folks are catching up.
Yep.
But from a use case basis, it's actually there's a lot of seniors using the products once they become legal.
Yeah.
And it really makes a lot of sense. I met somebody a couple weeks ago who had both hips replaced, and at least one, if not both knees replaced. And one of the biggest things is the opioid epidemic and using those pharmaceuticals.
Massive.
And for him, being able to go to Colorado and find pain relief from a much more natural source is a huge deal.
Yeah. I think that's why you see a lot of athletes, ex-athletes, especially NFL guys with the concussions and especially also people in the services that come back from overseas, whether they're in the Army, Air Force, whatever it is, and they have forms of PTSD. It's again the stigma is there, but I think once you look at these type of people who have serious injuries, they've had replaced hips and back problems and all sorts of stuff, or they have this anxiety from being in war. Like this plant is really providing massive benefits, and I think that's where you see like New Jersey. They've always had a medical program. And that's been something that's been kind of growing over the past couple of years. And now a more progressive guy like Phil Murphy is listening not only to the youth and to the millennials who want to legalize this thing, but also your Army vets and athletes and people that are really using this as medicine. They're not trying to just get high, which is a very important and cool part about the business.
So given all the stuff we discussed, where does that lead us? What's next? Where is the industry going?
Yeah, I think, again, the CBD hemp stuff is really interesting to me, just from like looking at the Alpharoot business. The past 2-3 weeks, we've had a ton of inbounds from people trying to come up with new and creative hemp and CBD products.
Has anything triggered that?
I don't know necessarily triggered, but maybe some good advertising and promotion, like paid content on our end. But I think people are seeing, again, the benefits, and also it's less hoops to jump through to be able to produce one of those products.
Yeah.
I think largely like that's the type of thing that's going to take cannabis into the mainstream are the over-the-counter, like the teas, the lotions, the things that people use as topicals that you can in the future get from your drugstores.
Yep.
I think that's massive. Obviously, more states continuing to legalize is a big thing. California is 2018 is the year for California.
Yeah.
Again, they represent the biggest market in the world. So I think everybody's looking at California to see what does the future of cannabis look like?
Yeah.
How are they going to roll out these laws, and how are these companies going to go from operating in the gray and the black market to now this is a real legit business?
Yeah.
How is California going to handle that? So I think, knock on wood, we hope, a lot of positive things from California.
Yeah. And you've had medical marijuana there for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But I imagine with something like medical marijuana, you had a pretty big discrepancy between, income disparity and how that you had access to it, where now that all gets removed, which is going to be, pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to need a medical card, although there are different products that people that have medical cards versus not have access to. But it's
what does that difference look like? Is it the
stronger?
The history actually, so if you're going like chemotherapy,
super strong on the milligram percentage of like an edible that has like 100 milligrams, which is a lot, versus on the rec side, which is usually 10.
Yeah.
But again, there's so many cool and interesting products, whether it's like a tea, a drink, the lotions, all sorts of stuff. So I think we'll continue to see innovation on the products that are out there.
Yeah.
There's no one true brand who's holding the torch, who's like the Coca-Cola, the Nike, or whoever of the industry.
Yeah.
So I think that stuff is beginning to kind of form, and people are trying to hold that torch.
Yeah.
Just really excited to be here. It's something that I've become passionate about.
Yep.
And we're talking about cannabis.
Yeah.
So,
is there anybody that off the top of your head is doing really, really cool things? Right. I know like Puffco is doing, we work with them. They're doing some cool stuff in terms of vapes, right, and equipment there.
Totally.
And anything that you've seen kind of in the last 9 months change the space or really push something forward?
Yeah, I think one of my first clients in this space actually is a business called Leaf. A buddy Yoni who's out in Israel. He's looking at how do you take this tool, this plant, and use it at home and cater the growth of a plant to your specific ailments.
Yeah.
So he's working right now in Israel with kids with childhood cancer. It looks like a giant iPhone, and you manage the growth through an app, which is wild. And they're creating strands based on people's sicknesses.
Wow.
That's super cool. And then something that I'm seeing more of as of late, especially based on California's laws, are people catering to, same concept, at-home grows.
Yeah.
So you're actually able and legally allowed to grow this plant at home. And now there are services that are helping people set these gardens up and set up a grow system so they can cater the product to themselves.
Very cool.
Customization.
So if people want to get in touch with you, Jeff, how should they do it?
For sure. You guys can check out alpharoot.co.co, which is the website. You can email me, jeff@alpharoot.co. I think that those are probably the best ways.
That's
And,
cool.
I'm always out there networking and trying to meet new people. So certainly open to any conversation about the business.
Awesome. And if you need to reach us at nomadfinancial.com, you can also hit us up at info@nomadfinancial.com. We have a couple of team members who are actually more knowledgeable about cannabis than I am. So they're always good ones to connect if this is a space you're interested in. Or if you're in the tech world also, we're always a good resource as well. Thanks everybody for joining, Jeff. Always a pleasure having you. One of my favorite people.
Thank you.
To say anecdote before I let him go, one of the first times we met, he just was joining the family over at Founder Shield, and it was a bit of a deer in headlight situation. How drunk I think everybody got while you're trying to play cool. First time out. Don't want to push the boundaries too much.
Hey man, I might have been a little high. you guys were on something else. I was a little more mellow.
Thanks for joining, Jeff. Always a pleasure, and
awesome.
We'll see everybody next week.
We'll hop